Recently, I was spending some time with Jesus just in prayer, and he actually brought me back to this story, to this moment. And he brought me to the place of homesickness. And if you know that feeling, you know it's actually pretty overwhelming, of really being lonely and feeling out of place and out of touch, like you don't belong. And you need something to help bring you back home. And I felt like the Lord spoke to me and he said, Phil, there is this eternal homesickness in all people. And he goes, I want you to know that there have been people who have turned their attention to the church to be something that would address this homesickness in their life. And as they took a bite expecting something wonderful, what they found was something incredibly different. And I'm sending you to Atlanta to create a church where those who turn their heart towards the church expecting of something, but when people have gotten close, they have found something quite different. And that my call on your life is to let these people experience the truth of Jesus.
We knew God was sending us somewhere. We sensed it. And Phil came home and looked at me and said, I think we need to plant a church. And I said, I know.
And it was amazing that as we started to pray, what happened wasn't that actually like I heard God clearly say a city. What actually just began to happen is I started to fall in love with Atlanta. It was enough that very, very quickly there was a deep sense in our heart that Atlanta was the place that we believed God was asking us to go. And so our first step really was coming and doing a scouting trip, because moving to Atlanta and then moving to somewhere specific in Atlanta are two totally different things.
So we brought a group of people here, a few that we knew were going to plant with us and a few that we weren't sure.
And I think what we left with was a sense that we were just really drawn to the northwest side of the city. And went back to Seattle and didn't have a decision, but we did have a deeper sense. And one of the things that we started doing was just praying over a map of Atlanta. And I remember that there was this day where I had just been praying and I was just looking at the map, and I don't really know how to describe it other than this tiny little zip code of 30080. I was just drawn to it, and I kind of shared with her what I said. I go, Emily, I just feel like I kind of had a moment. And I just remember really clearly Emily smiling and really opening up a journal. Written right in her journal is 30080.
So we got really excited. I contacted a real estate agent here just off of the internet and just asked to be put on his mailing list. We got him all the time. And so I just kept praying and waiting. And then I remember one day this house popped up on my screen and I just was like, this is it. Phil, this is the house. I just knew it in my gut. But the whole garage was under the house. So the entire garage was a footprint of like a 2,000 square foot house. So we were like, this is it.
And when they came here, they said, we want you guys to help us plant this church.
And the Lord spoke to us and said, yes, it's time to plant. And I remember the first time we ever met in their house, in their living room, and it was maybe just 6 or 8 people. And I just remember the intimacy.
It was just a really special season being invited into this group of people that were in the beginning stages of thinking about what a church could even be. It was exciting because you got 6 pastors in a room and we're all just trying to figure out how to do church. It's really fun.
We landed in Atlanta so full of excitement and dreams, and then it got hard. It was the loneliest season of my life. It was the season that I felt like all of my insecurities got re-exposed, where all of my fears had become realized, where I was put out there to do something I didn't know how to do, didn't feel capable of doing, and honestly felt convinced I was going to fail. And that became the context of the beginning of 2013. I even remember asking Emily, how long do we have to be here until we can move back to Seattle and people won't be mad at us? It was hard. Back up a little bit to before we left. On the night before we left Seattle, all of the students and interns and people that we had really poured our lives into in that season in Seattle had come to say one last goodbye. We were flying out the next day. And right towards the end, when it was time to go, one of them, who is a really talented musician, said, "Hey, we have a song that we feel like we're supposed to sing you." They played the song for us, and it was really sweet. It was really meaningful. I'd never heard it before, honestly. I thought they wrote it for us. And it was just this really meaningful kind of way, and we said goodbye, and we left for Atlanta. So flash forward about 2 months later. Emily and I had just spent the whole day with Chris and Jenny. When it was finally time to come home, it was late, and we put our kids in the car, and we started to drive from the east side of Atlanta back over to the Smyrna area. And there was just this sadness. And I remember telling Emily, I don't want to be here. I'm not home here. And I remember just telling her, I don't think Atlanta can ever be home, and I don't know what to do. I felt so lost. Atlanta's not home. And then it was just quiet.
And I just was sick of the silence. Like, I just needed Jesus to speak. And I was just compelled. I don't know why. I just turned up the radio. And it had been on low. And the song was playing.
And it's this song, Home, by Phil Phillips, that I had never heard in my life
before or since they sang it.
And I honestly, I feel like God had covered my ears from this wildly popular song to sing it to us at the right moment. Settle down, it'll all be clear. Don't pay no mind to the demons that want to fill you with fear. The trouble, it might drag you down. If you get lost, you can always be found. Just know you're not alone. And then, of course, this line, because I'm gonna make this place your home. And suddenly, our car fills with the Spirit of God.
We pulled into the driveway at this point.
Yeah.
So we just sit there and weep while our kids are asleep in the back.
It was just like Jesus met us in this lonely, uncertain place. And he just sang us a love song and made us a promise. A promise we couldn't deny. A promise that started when we were in Seattle and now is culminating in our driveway. I'm going to make this place your home. Something really changed that day. It's not like I woke up the next day and there wasn't still some things that were hard or uncertain, but my heart changed. And it really started us into the next season, and really the first season where God started to give birth to a church.
One thing that everyone mentions when we first planted, we were in the basement of Emily and Phil's house.
I just remember walking into the garage and it was nothing impressive.
Braden met Phil and I just was not about to go to a garage church because I had worked way too hard to get to where I was, and I was not going to be with those people.
My friend Emily said, well, they're doing this house church and they want me to come check it out. And I was kind of like, house, that sounds real hippy-dippy.
Wow, that sounds really, really cool. No thanks. I still remember meeting with another church planner. He looked at me and he goes, wait a minute. On Sunday nights, people are driving about a half mile away, parking at a church, getting in a van that we called Square Wheels. Thank you, Holly. Park in a random church parking lot.
Get in a random
van. Drive to a house to do church in a garage with no AC or heater, and they're coming back. And I was like, yes. He's like, okay, either this is all about to fall apart, or you are experiencing a move of God, because none of my people would do that for our church.
I remember the first time I came into the garage and was like, this is where we're doing church, all right.
There was just 40 chairs and a little space that had no chairs, which was our stage.
You know, the first couple times it was exciting, and then after that it was kind of like, how many times do we have to set this garage up? When are we gonna figure out how to get a building or something?
Phil would be building up this emotional moment of who Jesus is, and then someone would flush the toilet and you just hear the water rushing down.
One night I had to kill a cockroach while Phil was preaching because no one else thought, like, you know, what they don't teach you, like, who goes up and interrupts a sermon to kill the roach? I'll do it.
I know you
guess.
hear us talk about how we planted a church in a
Cookies,
garage. I just want you to stop and consider
lemonade
it for a second.
in the back. It was a garage.
If you planted a church out of your garage, what that would be like? It would be full of dust and cockroaches and cold. Remember some nights it got so cold, or days that it got so hot. I mean, I remember.
And we couldn't leave the garage door open because the bugs would be like.
But but the thing was, in this dingy garage, Jesus was alive.
And it just had this humanity to it and this beauty that I don't think will ever wipe out of my brain, because it just began to break down the reality of what church is supposed to be for me. And what I came to know church as was now becoming a community of people that were coming together to worship Jesus and coming together with their hard questions and each other.
I met people who I now call family that have walked with me through some of the best and some of the worst times of my life.
Every time I showed up, I felt like the Holy Spirit would say in some small way, like, yep, I want you to keep coming back. You're supposed to be here. There's something here for you. Just keep showing up.
It was intimate.
Yeah, it was very intimate, and you knew it wasn't about performance. You could see it wasn't about, like, obviously a building. It was more of just building relationship and just getting closer to Jesus.
I knew that it was something worth being a part of. I knew that was going to be home.
Step by step, piece by piece, over the next season, God just started adding people.
Yeah, all people who knew people. Mostly people who knew Braden Arcaro, actually.
Mostly people who knew Braden Arcaro. I would tell you the first significant
like
moment in our church was meeting Braden.
So we got coffee the next day, and after that, I was on board.
And then we got Lindsay.
We had to work a little bit. We had to work a little bit with Lindsay. We got Levi, we got Katie, we got Braden, we got Lindsay, we got Jenny. We got Jenny, and then suddenly, like, the floodgates of this Arcaro family tree started happening in our church. You could probably draw 30 to 40% of our church back to Braden Arcaro, and it kept happening, and it kept happening with other people. And by the end of 2013. We were starting to outgrow our garage. Or in that season that we got an opportunity to take over a church property that had been kind of left for dead.
It was owned by our movement, and they offered it to us. We just said, we'll revisit that building. And in our hearts we said that, and they offered it to us at another time, and we were like, this time, yes. We just knew. And we were way over our heads. It was too much building, too much money, too much asbestos.
There's mold everywhere. It's disgusting. It should possibly be condemned.
Rot.
I don't know how to put good language to how miserable it was.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember driving around these neighborhoods and telling God that I don't want this building. And it was right here on Fraser Street, right next to the church. I remember hearing the Lord just say, Phil, I promise you, if you'll make these neighborhoods beautiful, I will make your building beautiful.
Yeah, our facilities were in pretty bad shape when we first found them. Phil and I surveyed the property, and it was pretty close to being ready to be leveled.
That just looks like a broken net thing. It's not. Airflow. You may think, man, maybe that just looks like a hole in the floor. Actually, it's a contraption. I get to push buttons with people I don't want to be here, and they just fall into an alligator pit. It's high, upper class. There's a certain aroma that comes with a house like this. I don't know. It's somewhere between urine and vomit, but it is just oh so right. 2014 was probably a year where we saw supernatural provision like we couldn't have expected.
It was not feasible in our own might, but we knew God said this is the time. So we said yes, and the next year was just a season of bringing this place back to life.
Had a lot of volunteer help from other churches and renovate the place and get it to the point it is now.
I remember walking around the building with a friend saying, give me an estimate of what you think this is going to cost to fix the building. And he goes, I think you could probably get it fixed up for about $100,000. I had no clue how we were going to get $100,000, but it was enough for me to go, I think we could make that happen. And then God showed up, and about 3 months later, we had raised just over $500,000, and used all of it. But it was amazing the way God met us. So at the end of 2014, we just had this deep sense that there were some things that needed to change in our church, that we'd built something we loved, we'd built something beautiful, but we built something that had some significant weaknesses and immaturities and instabilities. And so we called this all church gathering. And I remember that night really clearly. I would still tell you in our 5-year history here in Atlanta, it was the most significant night of our entire church, where I basically said, hey, this is where we are. This is what got us here. This is what we've been doing wrong. This is what I've been doing wrong. And if we're going to make it, this is what we're going to have to change. But now I realize that that's what we have to do. We have to take a step back. And right now, Agenda 1 is not leading a church called The Square. Agenda 1 is building a core group of people who are so enamored and captured by this possible vision that they say, I want to be a part of this. And I remember just apologizing to them and saying, if you trust me, I want to ask you to come with me in 2015. Will you plant a church with me? And will you let me do what God has asked us to do to help you become the people that God wants to plant a church with? And really, honestly, a spirit of joy fell over our church that night. And we made some significant changes. Really, it was that change, starting on Easter 2015, where our church began to flourish. And I don't know why Easter has always been this significant day for us. Easter 2013 was the time we held a party to invite people to know about the heart of our church. Easter 2014 was our first Sunday night service in the building. Easter 2015 was our first Sunday morning service ever as a church. Easter 2016, we started a second service. Easter 2017, we started a third service. And then Easter 2018, we held a fourth service. And it's just always been this day of marking the incredible things that God has done in the history of our church. It's been an incredible adventure since then. And, 2015 really became the year that the doors of our church opened up to people in our community. It was probably the first time people started coming to our church that we hadn't met in another way. And God started to build this really amazing family that really in many ways has carried us forward to who we are today.
I can see myself talking about being in the garage when I'm 50 years old, and I can see myself talking about what it felt like when we did our first morning service, when I'm, telling my grandkids, like, man, we were counting cockroaches, and then we had 4 services on Easter in 4 years, and all of a sudden there's 740 people, and it's nuts.
I can't keep up with all the new people that are showing up, and there are people I don't recognize that are here for week after week after week, and it takes me like a month before I can find out who they are.
I think that was the biggest fear. Moving to a building, adding services, is how are we going to keep the presence and the atmosphere of it being home? Mm-hmm. The Square has never stopped feeling like home.
It began to have more of a church feel, but what kept existing from my experience in the Square and my partnership with what we were doing is that it kept feeling like family.
And it's family when it's really easy to be family, and it's family when it's really hard to be family.
I didn't feel treated like a fragile unbeliever who'd come to Christ. I felt welcomed into the family, given responsibility, and asked to run with the Square at the same level of trust and responsibility of people who've been walking with Jesus their whole life.
And there's people sitting in the pews every single Sunday that I feel so intimately connected with.
For the first time in my life, I saw glimpses of what I understand was the early church in the book of Acts, where people couldn't wait to be together, where people, when they had a problem, their first go-to was their church family because they knew they'd want to sacrifice for them.
We are in the times that they wrote about in Scripture. We are experiencing what they experience, a fresh outpouring of the Holy Spirit and people radically giving their lives to Jesus and being sold out for Him. And
a place where people are real, where we are authentic, where we have problems and we have hurts and we come together and we work on them and we talk about them and we try and figure these things out.
Even in the moments where we fail and where we feel weak, there's an army of people around us to show us that it's not okay to leave. You have to fight for family. It's left a significant impact on my life.
community, a sense of belonging, and a sense of caring for one another.
And when people walk in for the first time on Sundays, I think that that's still one of the first things that they notice.
Everybody is just so loving, and you feel like you belong.
You can't change a community and you can't change a neighborhood by yourself. You can only do that while running alongside other people. And I think the Square has taught me that, and has taught me the importance in the impact of the gospel as a whole and not the impact of the gospel as an individual.
The Square itself is a direct result of the faithfulness of the leadership of the Square. And because they love that way, that goes to people who are under them, which goes to people who are under them. And really it goes throughout our community and throughout Smyrna.
It's a group of people that are really focused on Jesus and where Jesus meets them.
We started at the beginning being people who wanted to be known for loving each other and loving others. And that's still who we reflect right now.
We take care of each other. We love each other. It's just, this is family. This is home.
And I want to say this, whether today is your first day, or you've been here 3 months, or 9 months, or a year, or 3 years, or you were with us in the beginning, whether you're here today and you've followed Jesus for a long time, or you're here today and you're still uncertain about who God really is, you need to know this. You should come with us.
People have asked me before, why did you start the church this way? And I think for us, we really felt a deep conviction that we wanted to plant a church out of the power of the gospel. And it's not that we wanted our church to be a house church or to always stay a house church. We would have been at peace with whatever God chose to do. But it was important for us that the church that we planted was not born out of a really amazing service or a really amazing building or a really amazing marketing plan. That our church was actually built out of love and out of the power of the gospel. And it really put into motion who we believe God has called us to be. A church that starts a movement that changes a city, where we have been called to plant a church in every neighborhood of Atlanta, to raise up missionaries and leaders, to raise up church planters and teachers and architects and doctors and everyday people who want to lay down their life for the sake of Jesus and the gospel. And I believe a day will come when the entire city of Atlanta will be shaken by a spiritual awakening that we will get to be a part of. And that God has asked us as a church family to be the kind of church that believes God for impossible things. And so it's been amazing to watch the last 5.5 years go by. But honestly, we do know it's just the beginning, and we can't wait for what's next.
But don't get me a mug that says the best is yet to come, because that annoys me. That mug annoys me in particular.
Yeah.
Which is just saying every day is not your best day, essentially.
Yeah.
We're living in the best, and we're expecting the best.
Also, don't
Scott
say...
was going to cut all this.